Good afternoon. Thank you to everybody who is online. And I'm Andy Dailey, the director of Uptown International School. And this is Nesma Hassan, who is the IB PYP Coordinator Designate. We are going to answer any questions you might have today. Thank you to everybody who is online. And I'm Andy Dailey, the director. Trying to open up everything. So if you have questions about anything about our school, but especially about IB, whether that be primary years program or middle years program or diploma program, you can send us your questions through Facebook Live or through Zoom. And so let's see what we have here. My eyeballs are ancient, so it takes me a few seconds to see everything. So I don't see any questions yet. What we're going to do is give you an idea about teaching and learning in the IB. And I'm going to talk briefly, and I'll try. And then Nesma will translate, but also add more in English and in Arabic. One of the best things about IB is how we teach, and that goes for all three programs. The IB PYP, which is what we're opening with next year, is PYP. So in PYP, teachers must collaborate together. They cannot teach by themselves in isolation. They are required to converse and meet on a regular basis, usually a minimum of once per week. And that's where they share ideas, best teaching practices, and plan. But that is controlled by something called the unit planner. And so the unit planner is the teachers as a group for grade 1, for example, all get together and decide for the next 6 weeks how we're integrating math and physical education and so forth around the big concept and teaching to a theme. That's broken down further by a template for the lesson plan. So you've got the overall plan for the next 6 or 7 weeks, and then each day is broken down. And each document is quite complicated, but it really forces the teacher to consider the teaching, the materials that are going to be used, the learner profile attribute that we're focusing on, the skills we're focusing on in every subject that's all connected to this one unit. So I will stop talking for a second, and I will give it to Nesma, who will explain this in Arabic and then add more in English.
هو مستر أندي بيتكلم عن عملية التعليم والتعلم في مرحلة ال primary years program أو مرحلة الابتدائي. فهو كان بيتكلم الأول إن العملية التعليمية بتتم من خلال خطوات. أول خطوة بتبقى التخطيط التعاوني، وهو بيتم عن طريق إن المدرسين كلهم بيتكلموا مع بعض وبيخططوا للوحدة مع بعض. وده بيتضمن طبعا مدرسين المدى الواحدة أو مدرسين الوحدات نفسهم. والتخطيط ده بيكون تقريبا بنفس مدة الوحدة اللي هي من 4 ل 6 أسابيع. وده بيتضمن الدمج، ازاي المواد كلها هيحصل الدمج ما بين المواد كلها في الوحدة. وبيتم تقسيم المخطط للوحدة كامل إلى أسابيع أو إلى مخططات يومية، ودي بتتضمن أكيد ملامح المتعلم اللي هتبقى موجودة في الوحدة والمهارات اللي هتبقى موجودة في الوحدة.
That was a good job.
Thank you.
This is not like the British curriculum or American curriculum. I taught the curriculum for many years, and you don't have these type of planning documents that force the teachers to do what the IB requires.
ده طبعا بيبين الاختلاف ما بين تدريس في المرحلة الابتدائية للبكالوريا الدولية وما بين المنهج البريطاني والمنهج الأمريكي، اللي ما بيبقاش فيهم حاجة موضحة إيه بالظبط المدرس هيبقى مجهزه للوحدة، وهو اللي بيتم تقسيمه للأسابيع.
The IB in 2014 updated the middle years program. Before that, it was somehow complicated. And so they came out with planning documents, a unit planner, for example, that we've already talked about the PYP. It really transformed the teaching and learning of MYP. That has since been applied to PYP, and now we're working to do the same thing for a diploma program for grades 11 and 12. So I think the documents force us, rightly so, to do what is required for the best approaches to teaching and learning.
في 2014 البكالوريا الدولية طورت مخطط الوحدة بتاع المرحلة الإعدادية، وده غير طريقة التعليم والتعلم بشكل كامل، وهم في طريق إنهم يعملوا ده مرحلة الدبلومة أو مرحلة الثانوي. فده بيبين أهمية التخطيط للوحدة في تطوير العملية التعليمية وعملية التعليم والتعلم داخل الفصل.
So we're going to take a quick pause here and just announce to everyone that today's topic is teaching and learning in the IB. If you have any questions about teaching and learning in the IB, about IB generally, about our school, you can ask that at any time on Facebook Live or on Zoom. And we're very happy to answer those questions. I don't see any questions yet, so we're going to continue conversing about teaching and learning. And anything that we say is not clear, or you want clarification or example, just email us. I would like an example of this or that, and we'll try to answer that.
وبس لتوضيح فكرة حلقة النهارده هو إن إحنا بنتكلم على التعليم والتعلم، فلو في أي أسئلة عن التعليم والتعلم في نظام البكالوريا الدولية عامة إحنا مستنيين أسئلتكم. لو في أي حاجة مش واضحة تقدروا إن أنتوا تبعتوا لنا إيميلات وإحنا هنوضح أي حاجة أنتوا تحبوا تتوضح.
So the first thing we've already talked about is that the IB provides curriculum, planning, and teaching documents. And that gives us a very strong basis of doing what the IB requires and allow us as teachers to meet the needs of the students.
في مجموعة من الأوراق اللي بتوفرها لنا البكالوريا الدولية اللي بتتيح عملية تنظيم وتخطيط المنهج اللي هيتم تدريسه.
The person responsible for making sure those unit plans and lesson plans are done well and correctly is Nesma.
إن شاء الله أنا اللي هكون مسؤولة عن مراجعة مخططات الوحدات أو المخططات اليومية للدروس، وهتأكد إن هي ماشية على معايير البكالوريا الدولية.
So I'm going to give a question to Nesma now, and then she will answer it in her languages. The poor woman's exhausted from translating all the time. I wish that I knew Arabic myself. This is, now that you understand that we have this formal process of creating a unit and also the lesson plans on a daily basis, the teaching and the learning in the classroom in PYP is very different than the classes you're going to see in Egyptian national curriculum schools, American international schools, and British international schools. And so I'd like to have Nesma talk about the classroom setup. And then once we're finished with that in both Arabic and English, we're going to go and talk about the learning and how that goes on in the classroom.
This question needs a detailed answer.
This is going to take a while, so get us buckle in and get ready.
Okay, so I'll translate the question first and then.
Yes, please.
هو السؤال بيكون عن شكل عملية التعليم والتعلم داخل الفصل في المرحلة الابتدائية للبكالوريا الدولية، وشكل الفصل بيكون عامل ازاي بالظبط وازاي بيتم التعليم والتعلم جوه. Okay, I'll start answering in English and then I'll translate. For teaching and learning in the primary years includes, it's based on holistic learning, which involves lots of elements of the children's personality. So basically, it's not only the content that is being taught, as we mentioned before, learner profile attributes are included, the skills are included. The way students learn is actually very different than any other system. So the first part is how the classroom looks like. So basically, the main points here is that students are sitting in centers or groups. So they're not sitting in rows. The teacher is not standing at the front of the class and giving instructions. It's just instruction time is very limited, between 5 to 10 minutes, just to make sure the students know exactly what routine they're following and what activities are going to be there. Then each student would have a group role, so each student will have a certain responsibility. It depends on the task. And then in the task itself, students are the ones performing the task. They're working together. And of course, while they are working on the task, they're displaying the learner profile attributes and the skills needed. In this activity, students are inquiring or playing. So basically, they are the ones coming up with questions. They are the ones using different resources to find answers for these questions and to gather more information and more knowledge. And use the knowledge they come up with along with their skills to solve problems or to answer their questions. This is the first part. How students are grouped, this is a totally different story, but I'll just state it briefly. Students are grouped in different ways. So we can have students grouped in the same ability or same interest, or same learning style, or students can be grouped differently, like one student from different learning style or students from different abilities. And again, this depends on the nature of the task. The second part is student work. So student work is supposed to be displayed all over the class. First of all, so that students will feel proud of their own learning process. And of course, so that they would be able to see the knowledge and the skills they have used throughout the unit. And they can revisit it anytime during the unit or other units. There's another point, which is the assessment part, because it's part of the classroom setup. While students are sitting in the class and they're conducting the activities, here comes the role of the teacher. So the role of assessment is one of the roles of the teacher, and the other role is, of course, facilitation and providing resources.
Let's talk about assessment a little bit later.
Yeah,
so
let's
just focus on the teaching. I'll
translate now. Okay.
Have fun.
طيب هو دلوقتي احنا بنتكلم على شكل الفصل في المرحلة الابتدائية للبكالوريا الدولية. اتكلمت على كذا نقطة في الموضوع ده. أول نقطة هو شكل الفصل والأولاد بتبقى عاملة ازاي. فاحنا بنقول إن الولاد بيبقوا قاعدين في مجموعات، بيبقى في أركان تعلم مختلفة، كل ركن بيبقى فيه نشاط مختلف. الولاد ما بيبقوش قاعدين طبعا باصين للسبورة أو المدرس بيبقى واقف أول الفصل وبيديهم تعليمات. الولاد هم اللي بيشتغلوا على الأنشطة دي بنفسهم، بيبتدوا يطرحوا أسئلة أو بيبتدوا يلعبوا في الجروب، بيبتدوا يستخدموا مصادر تعلم مختلفة، منها طبعا الكتب اللي بتبقى موجودة في المكتبة أو منها حتى حاجات من الحياة زي أوراق شجر أو أي حاجة متوفرة أو ليها علاقة بالوحدة. من خلال المصادر اللي موجودة بيبتدوا يجمعوا مجموعات عن أو معلومات عن الأنشطة دي، ومن خلال المعلومات دي بيبتدوا يستعملوا مهاراتهم علشان يستعملوا المعلومات دي في إنهم يجاوبوا أسئلتهم أو في إنهم يحلوا مشكلة بيطرحها النشاط. بالنسبة للشغل اللي الولاد بيعملوه بيبقى موجود في كل أركان الفصل، وده ليه هدفين. الهدف الأولاني هو إن الولاد يقدروا يشوفوا المعلومات دي في أي وقت وإنهم يرجعوا لها في أي نقطة من الوحدة، والنقطة الثانية هو إنهم يحسوا بالفخر بالشغل اللي هم عملوه، بالأنشطة اللي هم عملوها في الفصل. اتكلمت باختصار عن المجموعات دي بتبقى متقسمة على أساس إيه، وقلت إن التقسيمة بتبقى بناء على نوع النشاط نفسه. في أنشطة بتحتاج إن الطلبة يبقوا متقسمين مجموعات، يعني بيبقوا الأطفال بنفس المستوى أو بنفس الاهتمامات، وفي ساعات بيحتاج إن إحنا نقسم الأطفال لمجموعات مختلفة أو متعددة المستويات أو متعددة الاهتمامات. واتكلمت عن دور المدرس في الفصل، وان المدرس ما بيبقاش واقف اكيد في اول الفصل، هو بيبقى بيلف على المجموعات بيتاكد ان الولاد بيقوموا بالنشاط بشكل مظبوط، وبيقوم بتقييمهم على ادائهم في الانشطه.
Wow, you better take a breath. That's well done. So, to summarize, the teacher is not the fount of all wisdom or knowledge. They're a facilitator, they're a leader in the classroom. They encourage kids to be independent and to explore and try to find solutions and answers on their own by giving them the tools to do so. By doing this, we're teaching them, of course, independence, but also problem-solving skills, analysis, use of technology, setting up experiments, coming to conclusion, and lots more.
Students display agency and such activities and such.
Did we talk about agency?
No, not yet.
All right, well, that sounds like a good idea next. But before we get to agency, I want to repeat myself, and I'll keep doing it, that if you have any question of any type about our school and or International Baccalaureate, we welcome those questions. Just send us a message through Facebook Live or through Zoom, and we will answer it as soon as we're able to. The other part we'd like to talk about is agency. But I also, before we get to agency, I'd like to, did we talk about flexible seating and things of that nature in the classroom? I love looking at primary classrooms in school leadership, because they're very busy and very dynamic. When I was growing up in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee, in the United States, every classroom was very similar. And so we had a lot of chairs in there, a lot of writing desks or tables. And the teacher stood in front of the classroom and just told us what we needed to know. And there wasn't a lot of motion or activity. But when you see a PYP classroom, they're busy places. The kids are not sitting necessarily in seats. They might want to sit on the floor. They may need to decide to get up and go get crayons or some paper or more scissors. And they have the right, and we encourage them just to get up and get those materials. So when you look in the primary classroom, they'll be very active and very different from what we're used to seeing in traditional education.
هو مستر أندي بيتكلم على طريقة الجلوس في الفصل، وإن الفصل في مرحلة الابتدائية بيبقى مختلف، بإن طريقة الجلوس بيبقى فيها مرونة. في أي فصل في أي حتة بنلاقي إن الفصول كلها شكل واحد، مجرد ديسكات وكراسي موجودة وكل ولد قاعد على الطاولة بتاعته أو الديسك بتاعه. لكن في PYP أو في المرحلة الابتدائية من البكالوريا الدولية بيبقى في مرونة في الجلوس. الطفل يقدر يقعد في أي حتة هو عايز يقعد فيها، لو هيقعد على الأرض أو هيقعد على أي نوع من أنواع المقاعد الموجودة في الفصل اللي هي مختلفة. أهم حاجة هو إنه يكون قادر إنه يتعلم في المكان اللي هو قاعد فيه. كمان الفصل بيسمح بفرصة للحركة للأطفال. إحنا مؤمنين إن الطفل مش المفروض إن هو يفضل قاعد في مكانه طول الوقت، فالمفروض إن يبقى فيه فرصة للحركة، وإن هو يقوم ويتعامل ويتحرك في الفصل على قد ما هو عاوز، طالما إن ده مش بيعيق العملية التعليمية.
So this is, so in the classroom, you'll have learning centers around the room. Kids will be going to those centers, and at those centers, they'll have activities and projects they are working on to understand a concept. It might be a mathematical concept, some ideas in French or a vocabulary development. It may be about conducting an experiment and then making a survey based on some aspect of that. But you'll have multiple centers, usually a minimum of 3, but it could be 5 or 6 in the classroom. And so you have a lot of dynamic learning opportunities, and the kids rotate through those during the day.
Okay. هو ده بيكون في كل المواد، يعني مش في مادة معينة. المواد كلها بتقوم على نفس الفكرة، وهي مرونة الجلوس وفرصة للحركة. وده كمان بيتم من خلال أركان التعلم اللي أنا ذكرتها قبل كده، إن بيكون في على الأقل 3 أركان التعلم أو 5 أركان، والولاد بيبتدوا يتنقلوا من ركن لركن علشان يبتدوا يتعرضوا أو يبتدوا يتعاملوا مع الأنشطة المختلفة الموجودة في الأركان.
So this gives you an idea about what the classroom is looking like. Some desks and chairs, but lots of cushions, lots of beanbag chairs, carpets, and learning stations throughout the classroom.
ده بيدي فكرة عن شكل الفصل إن هو مكون من مجموعة مختلفة من المقاعد، سواء مقاعد كراسي عادية أو كبين باج أو ك أي ترابيزات أو أي كراسي الولاد يقدروا يقعدوا عليها، وطبعا ده بيتضمن السجاجيد اللي الطلبة بيقدروا يقعدوا عليها على الأرض.
We believe in something called student agency, and agency is really about ownership and having some sort of control and input into the learning environment and the learning activities.
احنا مؤمنين بحاجة موجودة في البكالوريا الدولية وهي اسمها الوكالة التعليمية. الوكالة التعليمية هي بتبني على صوت الطفل، إن الطفل ليه صوت وليه اختيار في الفصل وليه إحساس بأنه جزء من العملية التعليمية وأنه هو متملك للعملية التعليمية.
That can be, that teaches, of course, responsibility, and we all know that if we have some ownership of a lesson, we're more likely to be on target, on task, and value it in some way.
وده بيدي فرصة للأطفال إنهم يحسوا بالمسؤولية ويحسوا بالاستقلال ويحسوا إن هم ليهم فعلا دور في العملية التعليمية، وإن هم اللي بيقودوا العملية التعليمية مش مجرد إن هم بيتبعوا حد أو حاجة.
On a very basic level, this can be just a choice. Would you like to do this activity or that activity? Or this is an experiment on using salt, and so would you like to do this or would you like to do that? That is the most basic level of agency.
على أقل تقدير وبأبسط طريقة هو إن على الأقل إن المدرس يدي للطالب فرصة للاختيار ما بين سواء مصادر التعلم اللي هو بيستعملها أو الأدوات اللي هو بيستعملها، وده أبسط نوع من أنواع الوكالة التعليمية.
I love agency, and it's really great throughout IB generally. It's something we've been doing for years, but we didn't really label it. But now it's very specific, and agency is a big part of the PYP.
هو ده كان بيتم تنفيذه في المرحلة الابتدائية من قبل كده في البكالوريا الدولية، بس ما كانش ليه اسم محدد. دلوقتي هو اسمه واضح والخطوات المفروض الواحد ياخدها تجاهه واضحة.
It's really great because kids like to express themselves differently. They have their own interests. So let's say that what we're looking for in our assessment, which we'll talk about ad infinitum very shortly, but a student may want to express what they've learned in this unit by singing a song because they love singing, because they like writing music, and so they can make the words to a song and then communicate that through a song. It may be that the student is really in love with physical education. So it may be that the unit is about creation and creating and making new things, invention. So the student who is really into physical education can demonstrate mastery of this concept and skills by inventing a new game and then teaching the rest of the class the game. So these are some simple examples that we would expect probably in lower primary.
الوكالة التعليمية برضه بتظهر في مرحلة التقييم اللي احنا هنتطرق لها قريب. فجزء منه هو طريقة الطفل في التعبير عن نفسه، وده بيختلف من طفل لآخر. فده الطفل بيعبر عن نفسه عن اهتماماته بطرق مختلفة. فممكن في مرحلة التقييم الطفل يعبر عن نفسه أو عن الحاجة اللي هو اتعلمها عن طريق أغنية، أو لو هو مهتم بالألعاب الرياضية مثلا والوحدة عن خلق أشياء جديدة، فهو هيبتدي يبدع ويطلع بلعبة رياضية جديدة مثلا. فده برضو بيظهر في التقييم وبيظهر قد إيه الطفل بيختار طريقة التعبير من خلال أو عن طريق اهتماماته أو تعبير عن اهتماماته.
What some aspect of agency that I really love is that students are part of the parent-teacher conferences. And so often it's just the student telling us, this is how I've improved. So they have their own portfolio and say, well, this is me in the beginning, this is what I was doing, but now here's a piece of evidence, which could be a sentence or artwork or a project or a video. This is how I've improved. So they're very knowledgeable about what they were doing and how they've improved, and they're the ones doing the explaining. So they really understand that it's not the teacher marking them; they are assessing themselves and their own progress.
جزء من الوكالة التعليمية هو إن الطلاب نفسهم بيبقوا جزء من الاجتماعات بين المعلم وبين أولياء الأمور، وده بيكون اسمه اجتماعات يديرها الطالب. الاجتماعات اللي بيديرها الطالب دي بيكون الطالب معاه ملف اسمه ملف المتعلم، بيكون في أدلة للتعلم بتاعته، هو اللي قام باختيارها وهو اللي بيحطها في الملف الخاص بيه، وبيقوم بشرح أدلة التعلم دي لولي أمره، وهو اللي بيقول إزاي هو تطور من خلال الوحدة دي، وإيه اللي هو كان يعرفه قبل كده، وإزاي هو قدر يزود المعرفة دي وقدر يطور من مهاراته خلال الوحدة، ده من خلال شرح الأنشطة اللي هو قام بيها، وإزاي تطور من خلال الأنشطة دي خلال الوحدة.
This type of teaching and learning is not just PYP, as I've mentioned, it goes into the middle years program as well. Students have to do something called services learning, and they need to develop service projects that help themselves and the community based on something they've learned in their classes or new skills they developed in their classes. So an example of that in the middle years program, this agency could be something along the lines of, I've learned how to make ice cream using a Ziploc bag and ice cubes and sugar and whatever. And so they've learned that as part of a chemical reaction lesson in science. But then they can go out and teach that to others, perhaps in an orphanage or to their family, or demonstrate to younger students in the school this experiment and its importance. So the idea is they take what they've learned and they do something with it, a decision they make.
فكرة الوكالة التعليمية دي بتستمر حتى في المرحلة الإعدادية والمرحلة الثانوية. مثال مثلا بيكون من خلال الخدمات الاجتماعية الطلبة بيقدموها لخدمة مجتمعهم، وده بيكون على سبيل المثال ممكن يكون طالب اتعلم كيفية عمل الآيس كريم، ومن خلال تعلمه ده هيبتدي يعلمه للآخرين، سواء أطفال في المجتمع عامة أو أطفال في المدرسة، وبيبتدي ينقل التعليم اللي هو اتعلمه لآخرين.
So I think this continues to Diploma, and if you have any questions about agency, please send those to us now, and we'll clarify anything or give further examples and or compare it to other systems. You let us know. Before we go into assessment in a PYP classroom, we have a question. It's from Rada. Thank you, Rada, for your question. I highly appreciate, Rada says, not Andy Dailey, I highly appreciate schools who achieve the learning process through active and collaborative approaches. We do too, and this is one of the strongest aspects of PYP. No teacher can work in isolation, and no administrator can either. We work as a collaborative team, or we simply do not work. The follow-up to that is, are there vacancies in social studies, world history, or teacher, and can I schedule a Zoom demo? First of all, we teach in the next year, we're opening up through grade 3 as an IB primary years program candidate school. And so that's the first part. So if you're teaching social studies, that would be more of a grade 6 conversation. So we won't offer grade 6 for 2 more years. So next year, next school year, 2021 is up to grade 3. And then in the 21-22 school year, we'll offer up to grade 5. And the 22-23 school year, we'll offer grades 6 and 7. But the way we teach social studies in the primary years program of the IB is it's integrated with everything else. I realize now that I need to stop talking for a second and let my translator and partner in crime, Nesma, to catch up. But then we'll continue addressing this question.
هو احنا جالنا سؤال من غادة، وهي بتقول ان هي بتقدر المدارس اللي بتعتمد على التعليم التفاعلي، وبتسأل هل في أي فرصة لمدرس أو مدرس دراسات اجتماعية فهو مستر أندي كان بيقول إن المدرسة هتفتح لحد الصف الثالث الابتدائي. ففكرة الدراسات الاجتماعية مش هتكون لسه متاحة كمادة منفصلة، بس هتكون بتدرس من خلال مدرسي الفصل من خلال الوحدة.
To continue, Canada, we don't offer social studies as a single subject in primary. That's not allowed in the IB, and we certainly support that approach. So social studies is integrated along with math and English and science and what else? Math, English, science, social studies are all combined into one. And so if you have primary teaching experience and have the government recommended or required qualifications, you are very welcome to send us your CV. You'll find that information on our website, www.uisegypt.com. So thank you for your question, and feel free to type another question if we didn't answer it right the first time. We have a question or a statement from Nermeen, says, Bon Khairish. Thank you so much. We wish all good. We appreciate all the good wishes all of you keep sending us. Kindly recommend a workshop, Samar suggests, to be able to teach in the IB program. You need to work in an IB school to do official training usually, but there are options. I suggest you visit the IB website, www.ibo.org, and you can go to professional development. That's a link right on the first page. And then you can find an online IB PYP workshop, and you might be able to register for that. But traditionally, it's been the school has to give you approval to take it, but maybe things have changed now because we're all dealing with the coronavirus and other issues. So again, Samar, you can look at professional development for the IB at www.ibo.org. What you need to take is a workshop called Making the PYP Happen. Okay, so good luck and so forth. But that official certificate would come from the IB. That's what you really want. Heda sends us good luck and your very, very good wishes, and we really appreciate that. Tell us again in 5 minutes. Okay, so thank you for those questions. We have another question from Rehan. Thank you, Rehan. Give me a second to open the question up. Does this system require any parent intervention or follow-up at home? Or students are fully responsible for their studies even at the early learning stage? I think, first of all, your question's a bit loaded. If you require a tutor, we're doing something wrong. In no way should a primary years program student up to grade 5 need any form of tutoring. The second thing is we have expectations that parents are involved in the education of their child. Period. That's just good practice. We are a team and we practice together. The IB system requires parental involvement. And when the IB comes to inspect our program, that will initially be done in 2022. We'll have a conversation if things are normal in terms of the healthcare situation. They will visit our team and they will meet with parents to talk to them about their knowledge of IB and about their role in the school. So if you are a parent who is engaged in education and wants to be part of the competition, we welcome that and we require it. There is, in terms of homework expectations, for younger students, of course, there needs to be parental involvement. We strongly recommend that you read to your children. If they cannot read to you, you should be reading to them. When they can read, they should be reading to you and with you. This is a minimal expectation. And I'm going to stop talking for a second and let Nesma catch up to the translation, and then we'll come back to the question. Very good question.
السؤال بيقول هل النظام ده بقى محتاج تدخل من أولياء الأمور أو متابعة من أولياء الأمور؟ فمستر أندي قال هو أكيد الموضوع مش هيحتاج مدرس خاص، ولو وصل لمرحلة المدرس الخاص يبقى فيه مشكلة. فالمشاركة أو المتابعة بتكون من خلال الواجبات المدرسية، ودي بتكون من خلال القراءة سواء من الأهل للطفل أو من الطفل للأهل أو قراءة مع بعض الطفل مع الأهل. كجزء من المشاركة في العملية التعليمية ده مطلوب من نظام البكالوريا الدولية، وهيتم في فريق المفروض بيقوم بزيارة المدرسة علشان يديها الاعتماد. الفريق ده هيطلب مقابلة أولياء الأمور وهيشوف قد إيه هم فاهمين العملية التعليمية وإزاي المدرسة بتقوم بدورها من خلال تعليم الأطفال.
So I don't really understand the gist of the question, but to repeat a bit is that we expect you to read and to be read to by your child when he or she is ready to do so. We do not have any expectations that you'll be doing or teaching them at home. They'll ask you questions and you should be engaged with that. They will not have very much homework or almost none at all in the early years program, so grades 3 through 5. And even in grades 1 and 2, we don't really stress homework. And if they have any form of homework, it'll be simplistic and something they will be able to use in class the next day. So for example, counting the colors of the containers of the food in the refrigerator, or the number of squares they can find in the kitchen, the different types of materials being used to make furniture or whatever in the house, which wood, textile, and so forth. So they'll make surveys and do things with the data, but in no way should you be giving them extra lessons, drilling them in math. We don't believe in any of that. So we expect you to attend our information sessions, which will train you and talk to you about assessment in the IB, which we'll eventually talk about here today, about whatever, teaching and learning in the IB session, how to make a unit planner, how to make a lesson plan, brain development in children, parenting skills, literacy, and so forth and so on. So we have quite a bit of information sessions that will be offered online and also in person if the health situation allows us to do so. And again, that's required by the IB. We want you to be engaged, to be part of the school, and so on. I hope that answers your question for that part. If not, ask us another question that might be specifically focused on something that was not clear. Please do. Yeah.
هو إضافة لموضوع القراءة، الواجبات عندنا محدودة خاصة في مرحلة رياض الأطفال والمراحل الأولى من الابتدائي، فمش هيكون في احتياج إن الأهل يساعدوا في الواجبات المدرسية أو إنهم يدرسوا الأولاد في البيت. دي مش حاجة أكيد مطلوبة من الأهل خالص. الواجبات هتكون في صورة إن الطفل يرجع البيت يبتدي يعيش المواد الغذائية أو أشياء موجودة عامة في البيت. ممكن يقوم بسؤال الأهل، مجموعة أسئلة الأهل بيقوموا إن هم يوفروا مصادر تعلم من خلال مثلا الإنترنت أو من خلال كتاب، وده برضو بياخدنا تاني لموضوع القراءة. احنا بنوفر حصص معلوماتية من المدرسة للأهل فيها معلومات كتير عن طريقة التعامل مع الأطفال وفكر النظام التعليم في البكالوريا الدولية، ودي متاحة إلكترونيا أو فيس تو فيس أو وجه لوجه علشان ندي معلومات.
Thank you, Nesma. I'm looking at my phone because the questions are there and I can't see very clearly. So Roshan, the next part of your question is, are students fully responsible for their studies even at the early learning stage? We believe in student agency, which we've already talked about, kids having a lot of action and role in their learning. But our philosophy is that play at home and being part of the family are just as important socially, emotionally, and psychologically as anything else, perhaps more so. So that goes back to our homework philosophy. You will not have a ton of homework, and the kids will not be sitting at a desk at home struggling to answer questions and then asking the parent. That really is not productive, and that's not really learning. So again, we want them when they go home, have a snack, whatever, take a nap, be part of the family, play with their games, and so forth. So I'll stop talking for a second and let Nesma pick it up, and then we'll talk about technology at home.
جزء تاني من السؤال هو هل الطفل مسؤول عن العملية التعليمية، وهل ده بيبدأ من مرحلة رياض الأطفال أو بيبدأ من أي سن؟ الإجابة عامة على أي سن، وهو إن الوكالة التعليمية موجودة في كل الأعمار. وأهم حاجة في الموضوع ده هو إن الطفل يبقى بيلعب في البيت. وبالنسبة لنا اللعب بنفس أهمية التعلم، إن هو بيؤثر على الصحة النفسية والاجتماعية للطفل. فالمفروض الطفل أول ما يرجع البيت إن هو يبتدي ياكل، ينام، يحس إن هو جزء من العيلة، ويلعب علشان يطور من مهاراته ويبتدي يحسن من صحته النفسية.
So I hope that's clear, Roshan. If not, by all means, send us another message and we'll try to clarify further. We don't have any pending messages right now, so we will talk briefly about technology and our philosophy and views and use, and in the classroom, but also at home. And then we'll switch over to assessments, what they look like and their purpose. Meanwhile, if you have any questions of any type, we encourage you to send them by Zoom, or you send them by Facebook. We're very happy to address any question. In terms of home, a lot of parents, including my sister, have the kids engage in technology quite a bit. So we need you to be aware that too much unsupervised use of technology can be hazardous. And that hazardous comes from a lot of things. There's a lot of research out now. You can just do a simple Google search and you'll find recommendations from the British and American associations of pediatric physicians, child doctors about what's good, what's not good. Kids who are plugged into too much technology are not developing social skills, they're not developing communication skills. Chemicals are produced in the brain, which create some sort of addiction. I think most of us have that already since we tend to be connected to technology all the time. It's not healthy in children who at that early age is like 2, 3 and older, or even younger. They need to interact with humans, not technology. That includes parents, siblings, cousins, whatever, people who work in the house. They need that interaction engagement. Recommended is a maximum of 40 minutes of supervised time on any particular device. That would include television, that would include laptop, phones, and so forth. So be aware of that. We are, as a school and as modern, active, engaged educators. So we will not have kids be engaged with technology for more than 40 minutes in any particular day. Technology is a tool. It's not a way of teaching by itself. It's a way to get answers and information and to process some of that information, but that's it. So we have technology in the classroom. We have tablets that each classroom can check out of the library and use those to find information or to be engaged in some sort of online learning. We also have computers in the classroom to do the same purpose into a center as opposed to the whole class. So we have technology and it's very important, but it's also very important that we are aware of the health and safety of our students. We hope that you can apply these guidelines at home.
هو مستر أنتي كان بيتكلم على استخدام التكنولوجيا في البيت. فالمفروض إن وقت استخدام التكنولوجيا في المدرسة أو في البيت يكون محدود. اللي بيحصل دلوقتي إن في كل البيوت تقريبا أولياء الأمور بيدوا وقت طويل لاستخدام التكنولوجيا لأطفالهم أو لأولادهم عامة، وده بيكون من غير إشراف. وده ثبت من خلال الأطفال إن ده ما بيخليش الأطفال يطوروا مهارات اجتماعية أو مهارات التواصل. ده بيؤدي إلى الإدمان، وإن الطفل بيبقى عايز يستعمل وسائل تكنولوجيا طول الوقت. المفروض إن الطفل يبقى بيتعامل مع أفراد مش وسائل تكنولوجيا طول الوقت. وقت استخدام التكنولوجيا المفروض يكون على حد أقصى 40 دقيقة في اليوم، وده لازم يكون تحت إشراف سواء من المدرس أو من ولي الأمر لأي وسيلة إلكترونية، سواء تابلت سواء لابتوب واحنا مؤمنين ان الوسائل التكنولوجيه دي هي اداه، هم ادوات للتعلم، بس هم مش اساس العمليه التعليميه، ومش المفروض ان يكون الاعتماد الوحيد عليهم او الاساسي عليهم. المدرسه هتكون موفره لابتوبس وتابلتس وهيكونوا موجودين، الاطفال يقدروا ياخدوهم من المكتبه او المدرسين يقدروا ياخدوهم من المكتبه علشان الاطفال يستعملوهم، بس برضو هيكون ده بحد اقصى 40 دقيقه، لان احنا عندنا وعي كامل ومحتاجين ان الاهالي كمان او اولياء الامور يكون عندهم نفس الوعي بعنصر الامان في استخدام الوسائل التكنولوجية.
Two more things on technology. One of them is we do not allow any mobile phones with students at any time in the school. So there's no reason to bring them, and they're simply forbidden. This prevents bullying, it prevents predators from finding children online, and of course, helps us make sure that all kids are engaged in the classroom and in what it's doing, and they're all part of the classroom, not self-isolated because they're addicted to texting on their phone. So keep that in mind. The second thing is that technology, of course, is very important for communicating with parents. And we have our own platform called Toddle, which is set up specifically for the IB Primary Years program. So you'll have to have access to that, and we will too. And that's the main tool communicating what's happening in the classroom, the progress of your student, our curriculum, and our reporting.
جزء تاني من استخدام التكنولوجيا هو احنا مش بنسمح باستخدام الهواتف المحمولة في المدرسة، لأن ده بيزود التنمر وبيقلل من تفاعل الطلبة في المدرسة، فهم مش مسموح بيهم ومش المفروض ان الطلبة يجيبوهم في المدرسة. كنوع من أنواع التواصل مع أولياء الأمور باستخدام التكنولوجيا، احنا هنكون بنستعمل برنامج اسمه تضل، وهيكون هو البرنامج الأساسي لمشاركة مسار العملية التعليمية مع أولياء الأمور.
Okay. This is just your reminder that if you have any questions about IB in any way in any program, or if you have questions about the school itself, we are very happy to take those questions and address them. So you can send those questions by Zoom, or you can send them through Facebook Live in this conversation. Okay. So let's talk about assessment. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to suggest, because this is sort of an open conversation, that we first talk about assessment generally, and then specifically in PYP, and then in middle years program, and then in the diploma program. So I'm going to let Nesma do all the talking for primary years program, because she's the expert in PYP, and that's why she's with us. And then I'll talk about MYP and DP. Okay? So it's all yours.
Okay. هو دلوقتي احنا هنتكلم على التقييم في المرحلة الابتدائية من البكالوريا الدولية، وهو عملية التقييم احنا هنتكلم عنها بشكل عام، وهنتكلم عنها في كل برنامج من برامج البكالوريا الدولية. I'll start in English and then translate it. Okay. For assessment, we have two main types of assessments. We have, of course, the diagnostic assessments that we start the year or the unit with, just to know or to have an idea of the students' prior knowledge and what knowledge they have, and sometimes the skills they have. For the main two types, formative and summative. Formative is an ongoing process of assessing students. So in every single session, students are being assessed through formative assessments, which is done smoothly through the learning activities they're conducting. So students will be rotating among centers. In each center, there's going to be a different activity that requires different type of knowledge and skills and learner profile attributes. And through students' interaction within their groups and within the centers and the activities, they display the skills and the attributes, and of course, they discuss the knowledge they have. And through these discussions and working together, the teacher will have an understanding of students' knowledge, skills, and learner profile attributes, and she can assess them. There are different assessment tools that are shared with the students so that they would know exactly what they are being assessed on.
Like what?
Like what? We have rubrics. The rubrics indicate exactly what students are being assessed on and their level of understanding or the level they display in these points or objectives. We have the checklist, which is the same idea. We have the objectives or the outcomes, and the students would have, or the teacher would have to state whether they display it or they don't. We have anecdotal notes, which are the teacher taking notes of what the students are saying without giving any personal opinions. So he or she are just writing what students are saying. There is also continuums, which are general. It's just whether the student is exceeding the expectations or on the level or needs scaffolding or assistance.
Thanks, it's no choice.
And each tool goes with certain strategies. So sometimes it's through observations, sometimes we have selected responses, open-ended questions. So it depends on the strategy the teacher is using. These tools, of course, are shared with the students, and so that they would know exactly what they are being assessed on, and through doing the activities or conducting the experiments, for example, the teacher can assess them. This is one type of assessments. The other type is formative assessments. They take place at the end of the unit, and it requires students to use all the knowledge they have gathered and all the skills they've used to create a product. And the product, as you mentioned before, is differentiated. It takes different shapes and forms according to students' interests and how they would like to express their learning.
Just before we go on, we have a question from Ebtisam about differentiation. We're going to get to that question as soon as we're finished with assessment. So don't give up on us, Ebtisam, okay? Give us some time.
Okay. I'll try just to wrap. So the products are differentiated. The student would create a product that reflects their learning, any product they wish to create, whether a story, a song, as Mr. Andy mentioned before, a rap, for example, any form, a design, a drawing, whatever, as long as it indicates their understanding and displays their knowledge and skills. Should I translate?
Yes, well, Nesma is translating more or less all that into Arabic. If you understood that in English and need some clarification, type that question so we can answer that at the end of the Arabic language presentation. Thank you.
I also have to mention that each objective or each outcome should be assessed more than once. And this follows the best fit approach that comes in
I'll talk about that next.
Yeah. And here, this is for the validity and the idea of fair assessments. Okay, translation. احنا بنتكلم على التقييم في المرحلة الابتدائية البكالوريا الدولية، والتقييم بياخد كذا شكل. في منهم التقييم اللي بيتم في أول الوحدة أو في أول السنة علشان تعرف بالظبط إيه اللي الولاد عارفينه وإيه اللي إحنا محتاجين نشتغل عليه. ده نوع. في النوعين الأساسيين وهم الفورماتيف أو التقييم التكويني أو السماتيف واللي هو التقييم النهائي. في التقييم التكويني هو عملية بتتم في كل حصة. بيتم تقييم الطلبة من خلال الأنشطة اللي بيقوموا بيها في أركان التعلم المختلفة. كل ركن من أركان التعلم بيكون فيه نشاط مختلف بيتطلب نوع مختلف من المعلومات، مهارات مختلفة، أشكال مختلفة من المهارات او المعلومات اللي الولاد هيبتدوا يناقشوها في المجموعات بتاعتهم. من خلال مناقشات الطلبه المدرس بيقدر ان هو ياخد فكره عن مستوى الطالب وبيبتدي يقيم. ساعات التقييم ده بيتم من خلال الطلبه نفسهم او من خلال اقرانهم. الادوات التقييم بتكون بيتم مشاركتها مع الطلبه، فالطالب بيبقى عارف بالظبط ايه هي النقاط اللي بيتم تقييمه على اساسها. مستر اندي كان سالني ايه هي استراتيجيات التقييم وايه هي ادوات التقييم. ادوات التقييم بتعتمد على الاستراتيجيه بتاعه التقييم اللي المدرس بيستخدمها. الاستراتيجيات دي بتختلف، ممكن تكون عن طريق الملاحظه ان المدرس بيلاحظ اللي الطلبه بيعملوه، ممكن تكون عن طريق مهام مفتوحه، يعني ما بيبقاش في اجابه محدده المفروض الطالب يطلع بيها، وبيكون في اجابات مختلفه تختلف على حسب الطالب نفسه وفهمه للموضوع. في تقييم للاداء، في الملف المتعلم اللي احنا اتكلمنا فيه قبل كده، والادوات بتختلف تباعا. فبيكون في سجلات ملاحظه، ان المدرس بيبتدي يكتب ملاحظاته عن الطلبه من غير اي افكار من عنده هو شخصيا او اضافات، بيكون بالظبط اللي الطالب بيقوله. في لوائح تدقيق اللي هي المدرس بيقول هل الطالب فعلا قدر يوضح اللي هو فاهمه او يوضح ان هو عنده المهاره دي او لا. في سلاسل متصلات دي بتبقى عامه وبتبين مستوى كل طالب. في نماذج وفي سلاسل تقييم، وكلهم بيعتمدوا على ان بيكون اهداف التعلم محدده، وبيبتدي المدرس او الطالب او الاقران يقيموه بناء على اهداف التعلم. وكل هدف من اهداف التعلم بيتم تقييمه على الاقل مرتين، ده علشان فكره ان ما يبقاش الحكم على الطالب من خلال حاجه واحده بس. ممكن يكون في اليوم ده الطالب مش حاسس ان هو كويس او تعبان او النشاط نفسه مش من اهتمام الطالب، فلازم الموضوع يكون فيه اختلاف. وفي اكيد التقييم النهائي اللي بيتم في اخر الوحده، وده بيكون من خلال ان الطالب بيطلع بمنتج. المنتج ده بيبقى مختلف، ممكن اي طالب يقدر ان هو يختار منتج مختلف او يطلع بمنتج مختلف على حسب اهتمامه. وده التقييم ده بيحتاج ان الطالب يستخدم كل المعلومات اللي هو جمعها من خلال الوحده والمهارات اللي عنده في ان هو يطلع بالبرودكت ده او بالمنتج.
You better take a breath after all that. So that's about PYP assessment. We'll move to MYP and DP in a moment, but I wanted to address differentiation from Epsam. The question that she wrote is, I want to ask about differentiation system inside the classroom, either higher or lower level. I do not understand exactly what you mean by higher or lower level, but the point of differentiation is to meet the learning needs of all learners and not just the middle. So a textbook will teach just the middle for everyone. Even if you have a stronger student that needs a different type of instruction that's more challenging or more stimulating, they won't get that from a textbook. And so that's one reason that IB, PYP, we don't use textbooks, because we're not teaching to the middle. We necessarily have to differentiate. So other students have different challenges. So in math, Andy Dailey would need some challenge, need some help because he's not so great at math. But it could be that Nesma is just amazing in math. So when we go to our learning station regarding math with a particular unit in PYP, there'll be activities there for Nesma's level and also Andy Dailey's level and someone who else is on a middle level. So differentiation should have 3 or 4 different levels in the classroom. So the kids who need extra help, and those kids who are in the middle, and those kids who are a higher level or even a higher than that level, they should have their needs met. So again, PYP done properly and correctly, which is what we're doing, is that would require differentiation. Nesma mentioned at the beginning of her presentation on assessment in the PYP, there's often a diagnostic assessment done at the very beginning of the teaching of the unit to make sure the students have acquired the skills previously to be successful in the unit, or that they'll need extra assistance, or everyone might need some extra sessions regarding the skills needed to complete these tasks. So We know where they are based on diagnostic assessments and our anecdotal notes, which come from formative assessment. I'm going to let Nesma translate that, but I'm pretty sure that answers your question.
هو السؤال عن التمييز ومراعاة الفروق الفردية في الفصل وازاي بيتم، وهل التدريس بيكون لأنهي مستوى من المستوى. هو بس أنا عايزة أذكر إن التمييز مش مجرد بيتم على مستويات الطلبة، ولكن في طرق تانية كتير للتمييز أو أشكال تانية للتمييز هنذكرها بعدين. في مراعاة الفروق الفردية هو واحدة من الأساسيات عندنا هو عدم استخدام الكتب المدرسية، وده لأن الكتب المدرسية دي بتدرس لمستوى الطالب المتوسط، فالطالب اللي محتاج مساعدة ما بيتمش تلبية احتياجاته، والطالب اللي محتاج مستوى أعلى من التحدي ما بيتمش تلبية احتياجاته. المستويات كلها بتبقى معروفة للمدرس من خلال التقييم التشخيصي اللي بيتعمل في أول السنة أو في أول الوحدة، ومن خلاله المدرس بيبتدي يعرف إيه هي احتياجات كل طالب، وهل الطالب ده هيحتاج مساعدة أو هيحتاج مستوى معين أو مستوى مختلف من التحدي أعلى. وده بيتم تلبيته من خلال أركان التعلم المختلفة الموجودة في الفصل. ففي كل ركن بيكون في مستويات مختلفة من نفس النشاط اللي بيحقق نفس الهدف التعليمي، والأنشطة دي بيكون فيها مستويات متعددة سواء للطالب اللي محتاج مستوى أعلى من التحدي أو للطالب اللي محتاج مساعدة أو للطالب المتوسط.
So to remind everyone, some of you have just joined us, I can see from our Facebook Live session, we are in the middle of talking about assessment in the IB. So we have just completed an overview of formative and summative assessments and differentiation in the primary years program. Yeah, and my sidekick here would like to offer some more information regarding differentiation.
Yeah, because the questions always ask about differentiation based on ability, but differentiation is done on other levels or other like different forms. It takes the form of differentiating based on interests as well. So some students might be interested in soccer, for example, and others won't. So activities should be differentiated based on students' interests as well, not only abilities, and also on their learning styles, the way they learn. So there should be activities that would be interesting for students who like to watch, for example, videos or watch something or see something, for example, using visuals. Some students are auditory, so they would like to hear something. Some students learn by writing or discussing something, linguistic learners. So also students' learning styles and multiple intelligences should be included in the differentiation.
So differentiation is very complex, but it requires the teacher to really know their students. So I think that's really a good part of that as well, is that classroom bonding and observation and knowledge of what the students are able to do in areas they need more challenge in. You want to translate? Okay, get to it.
Okay. علشان دايما لما الناس بتتكلم على التمييز او مراعاة الفروق الفردية بيتم التطرق لفكرة مستويات الطلبة. بس فكرة التمييز ما بتتمش بس على مستويات الطلبة. بيتم برضو من خلال اهتمامات الطلبة المختلفة. كل طالب ليه اهتمامات مختلفة عن الطالب الثاني، فما ينفعش ان يبقى فيه اهتمام معين هو اللي بنركز عليه والاهتمامات الثانية مهملة. في نقطة ثانية وهي طرق التعلم. كل طالب بيتعلم بطريقة مختلفة، فالمفروض ان الطرق دي تكون كلها متوفرة، سواء الطالب اللي بيحب يشوف بيتعلم عن طريق ان هو يشوف حاجة، وفي طلبة بتحب تتعلم عن طريق ان هي تسمع حاجة او ان هي تناقش حاجة او تكتبها. وده برضو بيدي تنوع لفكرة الأنشطة اللي موجودة في الفصل.
So again, if you have any questions for us about anything regarding our school or IB programs, you have 25 minutes to get those to us, hopefully earlier than that. so we can address that. But right now we're in the macro topic of assessment in the IB. We have talked about differentiation specifically and formative and summative assessments in the PYP program. So I'd like to move into middle years program very briefly. Pardon me. And so PYP is very collaborative and it's focused on one unit of inquiry. In grade 6 to grade 10 classes in the middle years program, it's done by subject, and those subjects are 2 languages, mathematics, sciences, social sciences, design, the arts, both visual and performing, and physical and health education. So you have topics similar to what you'd have to GCSE if you're familiar with the British system. Similar, not the same. And so we can give any type of assessment. Formative wise, which we talked about in PYP, that can be quizzes, it can be homework, it can be observation, and should be all those things. It can also be other types of, you complete a project and we observe and understand your skills. But like in PYP, we have to have summative assessments. And summative assessments are planned before we start teaching the unit so that we understand what the final goal is and we communicate that from the beginning to the students. So there's no surprises in the MYP. Like, surprise, next week you have a massive examination of memorization. How do you know all these dates in history? That's not IB and that's not MYP. So what we do is we talk about the assessment from the beginning of the teaching of the unit and we work towards everyone being successful. And again, they're based on demonstrating skills and analysis. It's nothing you can memorize or shouldn't be. What the IB tells us is that every summative assessment, you have 4 possible criterion to use to make that assessment. And most assessments that are summative, which happen, it can happen throughout the unit, but usually it's at the end of the unit. You have a summative assessment that really is probably going to address 2 different criterion, or maybe 3. Very rarely do you have all 4 criterion, because the summative assessment would just be massive. So you have 2 or more, usually, criteria. Each criterion has 4 strands. So we have to have every strand in the school year of the 4 criteria has to be assessed at least twice. So let's say that your overarching criterion in individuals and societies, what we call social studies, the overall criterion is knowledge and understanding. Well, knowledge and understanding has 4 strands. One of those could be analysis of something. So you have to assess that twice in some of the assessments during the school year so that we have a real good picture of what the student is able to do and not do. So that gives you an idea. So every single subject has 4 criterion, each with 4 strands. So we have to assess those 16 strands at least twice in the school year. That's a big responsibility for the teacher, and that's why we really love the unit planner for the MYP. It really makes sure that we get that done and are accomplishing it. So again, like PYP, we have formative assessment and summative assessment. What we also believe as a school, and the IB believes generally, is that we should follow a best fit approach. I know I've taught in Egypt in 2 different schools before becoming director in this school, and I've worked in other schools throughout the Middle East and Europe. And a lot of kids, because of whatever, parent pressure, school pressure, whatever, psychological issues, that we have a lot of students who are pressured into doing very, very well in exams. And so they have a huge anxiety about that because we're so grade oriented as a culture. What we're looking for as a school and as an IB system is that we're looking for success. We want to see skills and knowledge demonstrated. We don't care necessarily where that demonstration comes from. What we as teachers do is give opportunities to demonstrate that. And that could be in a center, in a primary years classroom. It could be through a homework or a presentation or through a quiz at the middle years program level. So we can see it and we document that as teachers. It could also, of course, come in a summative assessment, a much larger, more complicated project that the kids had to do something. And we would love for that to happen, but it doesn't always happen. But what we as educators look for is, can they do this skill? It could be analysis of a text. If they done it in the class, if they did it in the class and they give a presentation, then we see that that was done and it was successfully done. And they may do it again wonderfully on a summative assessment, but they also may not for whatever reasons. They were ill, they had anxiety, a death in the family. We don't know, and we also don't care. We've already seen it demonstrated. We call this best fit. So when we give a report to the parent, can Garfunkel demonstrate analysis of a text? The answer is yes. We have seen it and documented. It just wasn't done in the summative assessment. We saw it in the third week of this unit. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So if you have any questions about best fit approach, do let me know. Now, I've rambled a long time, and Nesma needs to translate that.
Yeah.
But
Took notes.
yeah, so if you have any questions from the English part of that, go ahead and send this to me now.
مستر أندي كان بيتكلم على التقييم في المرحلة الإعدادية، وكان بيذكر فكرة إن البرنامج قائم على التعاون ما بين المدرسين أو ما بين الطلبة. البرنامج في المرحلة الإعدادية في عدة المواد بتبتدي تنفصل من المرحلة الإعدادية مش زي المرحلة الابتدائية. المواد دي بتكون رياضة، علوم، فنون، صحة. الرياضة كحساب، والصحة والرياضة، التاريخ والجغرافيا اللي هي بتكون اسمها أفراد ومجتمعات. فكرة التقييم برضو بيكون في التقييم التكويني وفي التقييم الختامي. شكل التقييمات بيختلف في المرحلة الإعدادية عن المرحلة الابتدائية. بيزيد عليهم إن ممكن يكون في اختبارات، لأن الولاد بيبتدوا إنهم يكونوا كبروا في المرحلة دي. التخطيط للتقييم النهائي بيتم، وحتى التقييم التكويني بيتم من قبل بداية الوحدة، وكل الأنشطة بتبتدي تخدم الولاد، لأن الهدف الأساسي هو ناجحين وإنهم يقدروا إن هم يعبروا عن المعرفة اللي عندهم وعن فهمهم وعن المهارات اللي عندهم. فالتقييمات كلها بتضم مهارات وبتضم أكيد المعارف. التقييم في المرحلة الإعدادية بيعتمد على 4 معايير، دي 4 معايير أساسية. كل معيار ليه عدة فروع. في كل وحدة بيتم تقييم 3 معايير. كل معيار أو يكون بيتقيم على الأقل مرتين. وده بيعتمد على فكرة الطريقة الأنسب للتقييم. إيه هي الطريقة الأنسب؟ هو فكرة إن في تقييم تكويني، فبنقدر إن إحنا نقيم الأهداف دي أكتر من مرة من خلال الأنشطة اللي بتتم جوه الفصل، وأكيد بيتم تقييمها من خلال التقييم النهائي. ليه بنعمل ده؟ ده لأن في أطفال أو أولاد عامة بيكون عندهم رهبة من الامتحانات، فبيجي في التقييم النهائي ما بيقدرش إن هو يعبر أو يعرض المعرفة والفهم اللي هو وصله بشكل كويس، أو حتى ما بيقدرش يعرضه خالص من خلال اختبار مثلا أو من خلال التقييم النهائي. فلازم يكون في أشكال متعددة للاختبارات علشان نقدر نعرف هل فعلا الطالب مش قادر يوصل للمعيار ده، ولا هو شكل التقييم هو اللي كان مخليه مش قادر يوصل أو مش قادر يعبر عن فهمه للمعلومة. وأكيد فكرة إن هو يعرض المهارات اللي عنده. في نقطة تانية سعيد كان ذكرها، وهي مخطط الوحدة. وهو شايف إن المخطط ده بيتيح للمدرس فكرة إن هو يبقى عارف بالظبط إيه المعايير اللي هو هيتم تقييمها وطريقة تقييمها.
Good. If you have any questions right now about PYP or MYP or best fit approaches to teaching, to assessment, please send us those questions now. We have about 15 minutes to wrap this session up. I'm going to go ahead and say something about the IB Diploma, which we will not offer for 6 or 7 years based on our 7-year strategic plan. But the IB Diploma is a curriculum, unlike PYP and MYP, where we create the opportunities for learning. And most assessments, formative and summative, are very similar to what we talked about previously. So I think the difference is that in Diploma, a lot of the assessments in classes look like IB official examinations. So at the end of grade 12, after 18 months of instruction, students take a series of exams. They're done around the world on the same day. There are different time zone exams, so kids in Asia do not necessarily get the same exams that we get in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and maybe kids in the Americas, both North and South, have another time zone. I don't know. But what I know is that when I'm teaching IB history, for example, my assessments look very similar to the exam that we take at the end of the 18 months. This allows kids to demonstrate what they know and the skills to be successful on those exams. And it tells me as an instructor that do kids really understand what's being asked, and do they know how to address these questions that they're going to get successfully. So IB exams come in a variety of things depending on the topic, but you'll have a lot of reading and interpretation activities that require conversations with the teacher. For languages, for example, there's a lot of research, and a lot of analysis, and a lot of writing in all subjects. There's lots of experiments being conducted in sciences. I think it's at least 50% of the time they're doing lab work. It could be even 75%. Very high amounts of that. So there's a lot of observations of the teacher, but a lot of outcomes that we're looking for the students. So IB exams differ by subject, and they're very rigorous. And again, it's up to us to make sure they're successful in those exams. As teachers, we know what's required, and so we've already integrated a lot of that analysis and skills as early as it's a PYP program. So if you have specific questions about Diploma, I'm very happy to try to answer those. But I'll just wait for you to ask those. Okay?
Let me translate this part.
Yes, please.
بس انت كان بيتكلم على تقييم في المرحله الثانويه او دبلومه البكالوريا الدوليه. الدبلومه هي منهج وليست اطار عمل زي المرحله الابتدائيه والاعداديه. التقييم فيها ما بيختلفش عن المرحلتين اللي قبل كده. بيكون في برضو تقييم تكويني، والتقييم التكويني بيؤهل الطلبه انهم يبقوا جاهزين للتقييم بتاع البكالوريا الدوليه اللي بيحصل بعد 18 شهر من التعلم. والتقييم بتاع البكالوريا الدوليه بيختلف بالوقت حسب المنطقه، وبيكون برضو بيعتمد على طريقه عرض الطلبه للمعرفه اللي وصلوا لها ومهاراتهم. وبيهتم جدا بفهم الطالب للسؤال وطريقته للإجابة عليه بشكل وافي. التقييمات بتاخد أشكال مختلفة، منها طبعا النقاش مع المدرس. في تقييمات بتتم من خلال البحث، من خلال تحليل نصوص، من خلال كتابة. في تجارب علمية طبعا كتير بتصل لحد 75% من الوقت أو من وقت التعليم والتعلم. فالاختصار التقييم بيختلف على حسب المادة في المرحلة دي اللي هي مرحلة الدبلومة، وأكيد في التقييم بتاع البكالوريا الدولية في الآخر.
Okay. So we're slowly but surely getting towards the end here of this online session. We should have another one next week or the week after. If there are specific topics that you would like us to address, then by all means email us and give us some suggestions of something you'd like us to concentrate on, or just a question, and we will try to answer that in the next session, or address the overarching topic in the next session. Okay? So again, you've got about 10 minutes to ask any questions you'd like. We will turn off at 2:30. So we have a statement here from Anissa. Thank you, Anissa. It talks about IB is one of the best and challenging educational programs. It's the best opportunity for children's education. We completely agree, and we really appreciate your comment. What the overarching topic is teaching and learning in the IB. And I'm going to talk about textbooks, or actually I'm going to let Nesma talk about textbooks, because all of us who did not go through PYP, very, very likely our teaching and learning was concentrated on the use of textbooks. So I'm going to let Nesma talk about textbooks and why we don't use them in the primary years program. And then I'll talk about them in MYP and DP briefly. Okay? You ready?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Okay. So in regards to textbooks, we don't use them in primary years and many people have argued with me regarding this point, and they said the IB does not say that you should not use textbooks for primary years. Yes, it's not stated clearly in the IB that we should not use textbooks, but there are millions of reasons why we shouldn't use textbooks in the primary years program. And I'll give you some reasons why we're not using textbooks. First of all, as Mr. Andy mentioned before, textbooks are created for middle students, the students with like who are okay on level, okay, but they don't give a chance for students who need assistance to improve, and does not provide the appropriate level of challenge for students who are extending or above level. This is one point. The other point is that something that we've mentioned today, which is differentiation according to interest. So these books do not have different, like various, or do not tackle different various interests of students. It's only reading and writing, so no learning styles addressed here. This is another reason. Something else, which is drilling. Here, we're only focused on knowledge. The main purpose of the PYP teaching and learning process is skills and understanding, plus knowledge. Here, are we using any skills other than memorization and drilling? No. Are we using students' understanding, or we just want them to take a word from here and put it into the space? No skills, no understanding displayed. Something else, which is relation to real world. How is this going to help the student use the knowledge and the skills they acquire into real life? They just have a sentence that they need to complete, or does this ensure that the student will be able to use the sentence in real life? Of course not. They have to practice.
I will add that most textbooks are printed in Australia, the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom. And so the scenarios they set up will be familiar for kids from those countries. And they do not take into consideration the context of our teaching and learning. We're very clear in our mission statement that we are aware that we are Egypt and we value Egypt. And so between the students' interests, let's say they're interested in dinosaurs, but the book doesn't talk about dinosaurs, then it doesn't fit the kids' interest, but it really doesn't fit the context we live in, which is Egypt, which is rich in material, and something the kids can find tangible. They can touch it, see it, feel it, and experience it. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
So yes, it's the inquiry-based approach is not here at all. They're not inquiring into anything. And also the identity, as Mr. Andy mentioned. Yes, there is the element of the global context here, but no element of identity in textbooks. So I agree.
Okay, time for your Arabic demonstration on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. احنا كنا بنتكلم على ليه ما بنستخدمش كتب دراسية في المرحلة الابتدائية من بكالوريا دولية. وفي ناس كتير كانت سألتني السؤال ده وابتدت تقول ان لا البكالوريا الدولية ما بتقولش مش المفروض ان احنا نستعمل كتب دراسية. ايوه هي البكالوريا الدولية مش ما بتقولش ده بالنص، بس احنا بنبص على ايه هي فكرة التدريس او التعليم والتعلم في المرحله الابتدائيه البكالوريا الدوليه. هي بتقوم على البحث والاستفسار، وده عنصر مش متوفر في الكتب الدراسيه. هي بتقوم على التمييز ومراعاه الفروق الفرديه، وده برضه مش متوفر في الكتب الدراسيه اللي احنا زي ما ذكرنا بتبقى موجهه للطالب في المستوى المتوسط. مفيش اي مراعاه للمستويات المختلفه، مفيش تحديات اصعب للطلبه اللي محتاجه يبقى في عنصر تحدي. ومستر أندي ذكر ان الكتب دي كلها بيتم كتابتها في بلدان تانية زي امريكا وزي بريطانيا، فبيكون عنصر العقليه الدوليه موجود، بس عنصر الايدنتيتي او الهويه مفقود ومش موجود. دي كلها أجزاء مهمة جدا. في جزء تاني وهو إن الكتب دي كلها بتبقى مهتمة بإن الطالب يقدر ياخد كلمة ويحطها في جملة، أو إنه يكون جملة بس ده ما بيضمنش ان الطالب يقدر يستخدم المعلومات دي في حياته. هو لازم يمارس ده بان هو يتكلم مع طلبات تانيين او يتكلم مع المدرس ويستعمل ده في الحياه. فدي كلها نقاط مش متوفره في المناهج الدراسيه او في الكتب الدراسيه.
We have 5 minutes left before I go to textbooks in MYP and DP. I would appreciate you sending us any last questions or comments. Textbooks are used in the middle years program of the IB. They're textbooks developed specifically for the IB. Now, the MYP does not require textbooks at all. You can, like we do in PYP, create your own materials and so forth. So you'll find a mixture of approaches. For example, I've taught MYP individuals and societies, what we call social studies, before. And so we can use the local resources, the school's library, online resources, whatever we'd like to use. But now there are some textbooks to help guide you, but those textbooks usually help you do certain things like this is the skill we're looking for, this is the task, here's some information. But you might want to consider adding this, this, and this. And of course, these are activities to deal with differentiation, the teaching. So we're not taking textbooks from other curricula or things of that nature. We have them, those purpose written and constructed or published books for the PYP. For the diploma program is the same. We can take any material we want to, and we used to not have IB textbooks, so we took a lot from other places. But now that we have really good comprehensive textbooks, so you'll see a lot more textbook used starting at grade 6. Not necessary, but it's something that gives a bit of strength to the system. And of course, again, they're written specifically for the IB programs.
دلوقتي احنا بنتكلم على الكتب في مرحله الدبلومه او في المرحله الثانويه للبكالوريا الدوليه. من اول المرحله الاعداديه هيتم استخدام كتب مش بشكل اساسي، وهي مش من متطلبات البكالوريا الدوليه، بس دلوقتي في كتب مطوره خصيصا للبكالوريا الدوليه للمرحله الاعداديه او للمرحله الثانويه، فبيتم استخدامها. ومستر اندي كان بيدرس افراد ومجتمعات في المرحله الاعداديه، وكان بيدرسها الاول من غير كتاب، وبيستخدم الموارد المتوفره سواء كتب او اي موارد اخرى، مصادر تعلم او موارد تعلم مختلفه. الكتب دي بتقوم بتوجيه المدرس وبتقول له بالظبط ايه هي المهارات اللي ممكن تبقى موجوده في نشاط معين، والمعرفه اللي ممكن الطالب يطلع بيها من النشاط ده، وبتدي له اقتراحات واكيد المدرس يقدر ان هو يطور فيها. في الدبلومه برضو في كتب وهي متاحه دلوقتي، فالكتب ممكن نقدر نستخدمها من اول المرحله الاعداديه لحد المرحله الثانويه، بس هي مش الاساس في العمليه التعليميه.
Good job. So we have just a minute and a half. We have a comment from Anissa praising Andy Dailey. Thanks, Anissa. You make it sound like I created the universe of learning, but that's only partly true. So thank you for that. Very kind to hear from you. Are there any other comments or questions from anybody? We're checking our little chat windows. The answer to that is no, and we're really sort of out of time. So what we're going to do is say goodbye. If you have suggestions for future topics of these conversations, please let us know what those may be. You can do that through our social media. You can do it through the Facebook page. You can do it through our Facebook system. Whatever you would like to do. Any questions or anything else? We've got someone very quickly is answering a question. Thank you for the smooth clarification. You're very, very welcome. Please let us, thanks Naveen, love to hear from you. So maybe that's it. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time, which may be next Thursday or sometime soon. We will give you a notification on social media. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And happy Labor Day, and that's tomorrow. Yeah. And of course, Ramadan Kareem to everybody who is participating in that. Have a good day. Bye-bye.